our series of features on local heroes. And tonight we're looking at a Borders legend who really does live up to the description. An ordinary lad from Hawick, he became famed throughout Europe in the 1930s for his incredible ability with motorbikes.
But it was his talent as a rider that ultimately led him to his death. Jonathan Willoughby has been looking at the packed life of Jimmy Guthrie.
It's a story straight out of a boy's own comic. A lad from a backwater town who became a world champion, who survived one of Britain's worst ever rail accidents at Quinton's Hill near Gretna before going on to fight the Germans, first on the field of battle, then on the field of sport. Jimmy Guthrie, the son of a plumber, certainly crammed plenty of adventure into his life. He was only 18 years old when he headed off to the horrors of the Great War and Gallipoli, where fate was waiting for him.
It was while on the Western Front in France that Jimmy became a dispatch rider, and it quickly became apparent that he had a natural flair for bikes. He was quick and he had great balance, two attributes that were very desirable when you were dodging bullets and mortars.
Amongst the carnage of the trenches, Jimmy had discovered an incredible talent, and back on Civvy Street, he set his sights on becoming the quickest man in the world on a motorbike.
Well, he was just a natural, and he was very, very fit. He went, latterly, he went 3 days a week up to Leith to Cotter's Gym, and he worked out in the winter, and he just more or less rode on the continent all summer, and very, very modest, very, very quiet. He never used two words when one would do, and he just, reporters didn't like him because they couldn't get anything out of him at all.
It was now the 1930s, and bike riders were fiercely loyal to machines built in their own country. Jimmy rode the British-made Nortons, while the Germans, French and Spanish stuck to their own manufacturers. His continental rivals would arrive at races in their own trailers, while Jimmy shifted his bike around Europe on the parcel carriage of a train. But his lack of resources didn't stop him winning every race in sight.
In his day, in the mid-30s, he would be equivalent to a world champion. And he was he was a household name in Europe. And the Germans thought tremendously of Jimmy Guthrie.
Jimmy was virtually unbeatable. He developed his own style of racing, flat to the tank, where he contorted his body to make his machine more streamlined. In the 1930s, he set world speed records and was crowned champion of Europe. He landed advertising contracts. These days, Jimmy would have been a multi-millionaire, but for all his fame, Jimmy was earning just £500 a year. And his most famous victory was just around the corner.
Well, it's the 1936 European Grand Prix trophy, and it was presented to Jimmy Guthrie by Adolf Hitler, who I think had expected a German rider to win, but of course Guthrie won and Hitler presented the cup to him, and it was brought back to Hawick and has been here ever since.
12 months later, Jimmy was invited to return and defend his title. His arch enemies determined to see the Norton beaten by the BMWs.
Despite a terrible start to the race, going into the final lap, Guthrie had managed to build up a 2-minute lead. Back at the finishing line, they were waiting to unfurl the Union Jack, but then the 300,000-strong crowd fell silent. Word came through of a terrible accident. Guthrie had been thrown into the trees, suffering horrific injuries.
What caused the accident isn't known for certain, but the finger of suspicion was pointed at this man, a member of the Nazi party called Manfeld, who'd been entered in the race by Hitler. He was one of the stragglers, and eyewitnesses reported seeing him deliberately pull out in front of Guthrie, forcing him off the road. A few days later, Jimmy's body was returned to the Borders.
It was a massive funeral. People came from all over the country and over Europe, and yes, it was quite a thing for Hawick.
The mourners stretched for 3 miles. Monuments were erected in Germany, the Isle of Man, and of course Hawick. Jimmy Guthrie, a legend who, unlike his greatest rivals, conquered the world.
Wow.